Stay a while and listen. Let me tell you about the old times when the U in YouTube still meant something.
Well, this is a topic that is on my mind basically every day, and I considered a number of times to make a video about it, but always decided against it because it can very easily just derail into venting, and it may come across as whiny or entitled or whatever. And quite frankly, why should you as viewer care? Like, this is not your problem. This is something that we have to figure out as creators. However, when Shad put up a video about this just recently, that did end up inspiring me to also add my 2 cents. So thank you, Shad, for the nudge. Let me start out with some positive things. So first off, it kind of bothers me when people make statements like, YouTube hates creators, or YouTube does this, or thinks that, or feels that way. No, it's not a person. It's not a sentient entity. It's a big business with who knows how many employees. And even the higher ups in management at YouTube, even the CEO, is to an extent a cog in the machine. And they look at things from a top-down bird's eye view. So when you say YouTube doesn't care about you as a creator, in a way that's true, because it can't care. It's not an entity capable of caring. And even if individual people who work at YouTube care about individual channels, maybe, they have to look at the bottom line. They have to look at the numbers overall. Apparently the switch from a subscription-based system to a recommendations-based system, which is, in my opinion, absolutely horrible. But from what I've heard, it has benefited YouTube overall in terms of engagement, watch time, etc., etc. So as frustrated as I am sometimes, and as terrible as I think some of the recent changes have been at YouTube, it's not as simple as just saying, they hate us. And there have also been some good changes. Overall, I'm still immensely grateful for being able to do this. I'm still passionate about what I do, which is why I'm still here, despite the difficulties and frustrations, etc., etc. I still love what I do, and not that many people can say that about their job. That, this is something that they've always wanted to do, they love doing, and all of this. So this is still amazing in many ways. The community is awesome. Being able to express myself artistically and have an audience, and being able to swing swords and overanalyze things, like going full nerd mode and getting paid for it, is pretty freaking awesome, no doubt about it. However, it's also not as sunshine and butterflies as some people seem to think. It's only natural that people who haven't done it, who haven't had to deal with the negatives that come with it, have an overly rosy view of what it's like to be a content creator. And in fact, I have to admit, when I first saw Shad's video pop up, my initial gut reaction was, oh, come on, what are you complaining about? You get more views on average with slightly less subscribers. But then I caught myself and realized, wait a moment, basically doing the same thing as somebody with a much smaller channel who says, well, you complain about 100,000 or 50,000 or even 30,000 views only. When I put up, I'm happy to get 500 or whatever. It's like, yeah, it depends on your frame of reference. But I can tell you from personal experience, it makes quite a difference between consistently getting 100,000 plus per video and having several videos that get several 100,000, etc., and being often stuck at 30, 40, 50,000. It does make quite a huge difference. Like, literally, my income is cut in half compared to last year. In fact, less than half, depending on which month you go by. And when this is a full-time job, that's a problem, and it very much is. Again, this is not something that you would know if you haven't done it yourself, and I can't blame you at all for misjudging the situation. But just to give you a better idea, my schedule on most days is basically get up, go to the gym, work out, come back, start researching, recording, editing, making thumbnails and other YouTube work with daily chores in between, obviously. Try to get some relaxation in the evening for an hour or two, go to bed, rinse and repeat. And cutting tests take up basically an entire day. So yeah, it's a bit more involved than occasionally turning on the camera, rambling for a bit and uploading some crap. Obviously, other professions have problems too. I'm not trying to downplay anyone else. Like, there's always gonna be like a miner who comes along like, oh, you complained about this? Come on, bitch, please. Like, yeah, I get it. There are some extremely hard, destructive jobs, much more stressful, etc. I get all that. I'm just trying to make you understand why creators have to worry about the numbers and do get stressed out by them. Because, well, this is our livelihood. If you're passionate about what you do, that's the last thing you want, to quit the whole thing, especially since it took so long to build it all up. So what's the problem exactly? Why do I say YouTube is a burnout machine now? Well, when things were still subscription-based, over time, as you consistently put up content, if the content was good enough and you kept at it over and over again, try to keep improving, etc., you would build up an audience, and that audience would mostly stay with you. Of course, you lose subscribers, gain subscribers, etc. Some people stop being interested or don't like you anymore, or start watching something else, or don't have the time anymore to watch, etc. This is all part of the normal process. But generally, you have a certain core audience that you can rely on. So if something that you put up, maybe they're not quite as interested as you thought, or the video isn't as good as you thought, whatever it is, and you get less engagement, then okay, fine. The next one, if you try to make it better, it's going to get back up again because you have that core audience. Now, because everything is recommendations based and most people hang out in the home tab, like the standard homepage, as opposed to going to the subscriptions tab. Some people still do that, but many don't seem to. Now you get things recommended, that YouTube things you should watch. So rather than watching what you signed up for, what you knew that you're interested in, now you're getting a bunch of stuff that YouTube wants you to watch. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's totally off, whatever. So that means that there is a lot more randomness involved. There's still a smaller core audience. There are still people who get notifications or go to the subscriptions tab, etc., but it's much lower. So the baseline now is very much lower. I used to, even just a year or two ago, when I put up a video, the baseline was essentially, it would usually get like 50,000 views within a day. That's kind of on the lower end. Quite often it was more. And if it was a video that was really custom tailored to what I think my audience likes and was well made and everything, then it would get like 60, 70, 80,000, sometimes 100,000 just in one day. Now it's like 20,000 a day, sometimes less. And after 3 days it's like 30. And then sometimes it just creeps up slowly from there. Furthermore, and this is a big part of the burnout, you can't really account for this randomness much anymore. It used to be easier to figure out why a video underperforms. Like in hindsight, you can say, okay, maybe this video idea wasn't as good as I thought, or maybe I could have done this or that better, etc. Maybe the thumbnail or title wasn't good enough, this and that and the other. Now it just fluctuates way more because yeah, it's dependent on whether the algorithm picks up on it and actually sends it out to people and recommends it, which is, since YouTube isn't very forthcoming with transparency, we largely don't know. And I can't even really blame the higher ups at YouTube too much for it, because if they told everybody exactly how everything works and how videos get promoted and what makes the algorithm pick it up, then everybody would try to exploit it. Not that it doesn't already happen. Obviously, clickbait is a big part of it, which is another big problem. It's relatively easy to create and maintain a large audience that is not a happy audience because you do it via clickbait. And I mean like the worst kind of clickbait. There's sort of thing like, trip to the dentist gone sexual, you won't believe what happened then. And then you find out that the video, there isn't even a dentist in the video. It's like somebody brushing their teeth, and there's nothing remotely sexual, and you know what I'm talking about all too well. In fact, I could have titled this video, "I don't know how much time I have left," meaning how much time on YouTube successfully, but that could be read as some medical condition, "Oh, he's dying," and this sort of clickbait, which I've always hated, despised with a passion, but that's rewarded. But that's also rewarded on other social media platforms. It's also rewarded in journalism, very tragically and unfortunately. Now, being a YouTuber has never been 100% controllable, obviously. There have always been plenty of variables. There's always been a chance that a video that you spend a long time researching and editing, that you put tons of effort into, just fizzles out, never goes anywhere, and then you put up some low effort shit post and it goes viral. That's always been a thing, but it's way more pronounced now. It's really hard to predict anything. I used to be fairly good at predicting things because, I mean, of course, I've been on YouTube since 2007. So over time you get better at recognizing certain trends, at figuring out what works and what doesn't, what topics are popular, what formats and presentations work well, etc., etc. Now, nope. I've had a bunch of videos lately that I was convinced would do well because I figured you people are interested in it, and I put a lot of effort into it, and thumbnail and title, and nuh-uh. So that of course contributes enormously to burnout. For one, the stress spike every time, because after I've had 3 or 4 videos that did poorly, and as a result ad revenue nosedives, and I'm starting to get worried about the financial situation, every time I put even more effort into it, and I'm thinking, okay, this video, this is going to be the comeback, this is going to do it, and every time it bombs, it's an enormous stress spike because I feel powerless. I feel like whatever I do, it's not enough, it doesn't matter, I can't fix this, and this is going to go to hell. Which is almost like a form of learned helplessness, where your sense of self-efficacy suffers because it's just out of your control, seemingly. Like everything you try, it just doesn't quite work. Or sometimes when something does work out very well, you can't reproduce it, and it's just a lot of guesswork, and it feels like you're not really getting ahead. Because ideally, as a creator, what you would like is expand your audience, not struggle desperately to retain it and then still lose out and get less views and engagement over time. Again, I'm sorry if this comes across as whiny and I don't know, whatever. Again, it's not your problem, it's just I felt like talking about it. Maybe it's just venting, maybe it's just ranting, but I don't know. maybe somebody finds it interesting. I have basically no hopes that anybody, any higher up at YouTube would ever see content like this and think, oh, well, we should really change something and try to fix this problem. I don't think so. But what else can we do? The only thing we can do is try harder and harder and harder and keep at it and try to deal with the burnout. And by the way, I do also see the positive in this. If there's constant pressure and I'm being forced to rethink everything and constantly try to improve, that's great. You don't want to stagnate. You don't want to become complacent. You want to keep pushing the boundaries. You want to keep developing personally and make better videos and keep reaching. Always when something didn't work quite as well, when the numbers weren't quite right, people have always said, just do what you want. Just, it'll come, the views will come, and we're here and this and that, which is, I appreciate that. It's supportive, it's well-intentioned. It's great and all, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. At this point, I've been punished many times for making a video that I really wanted to, that I really felt, that I was enthusiastic about. But the algorithm disagreed, it disapproved, and it cast it aside, and it didn't go anywhere. And the problem is, every time you put up something that doesn't do so well, subsequent videos do worse than they otherwise would. Now, this is something that in official YouTube statements has been denied. They have said, no, this is not how the algorithm works. But wait a moment. That is literally how this system works. It's fueled by recommendations. The algorithm recommends to people more of the same that they've watched. So if they don't watch this video, then next time, guess what? The algorithm picks that up and gives them less of that which they didn't watch or watched less of or whatever. This is literally how that works. And it is very noticeable. I can see that over and over again in the analytics, which are weird anyway. I keep seeing in the analytics when a video completely underperforms by the standards that I've come to expect to be able to, or used to be able to. And it says, oh, your video is performing as usual. No, it's not. It's completely underperforming. So that suggests to me that the algorithm that also informs those analytics has come to the conclusion, so to speak, that, oh yeah, this is just the average views that this channel gets. Well, it's a recent thing. It did much better in 2021, even also 2020. As terrible of a year as it was overall, in terms of YouTube, my channel actually did quite well. And then it did even better for most of 2021 until something happens. Something weird happens. I have no idea why, but I started noticing these enormous dips. They came more or less out of nowhere. There's been like some tendency maybe, but also pretty sudden things. Particularly around September, I noticed that, okay, everything was down. You know, views and ad revenue and everything was down. So my usual response is, oh, I gotta work harder. I gotta make better content. So in October, I worked like a maniac to increase the overall production value and quality and everything. Because this is a one-man show, I do everything myself, so I had to put quite a bit more time into it. And I was punished for it because October ended up literally the worst performing month of the entire year. And that's when my burnout really intensified. I had an extremely hard time staying motivated after that in November and December. In particular, I was just down, I was depressed, I was, again, I'm not gonna bother you too much with my personal problems. It's not your problem. But it's just, it shows that there's something wrong, right? So what I'm trying to say is this stifles creativity, because sometimes I have an idea that I quite like, something that I would really like to do, that I'm creatively motivated for, and then I decide afterwards, no, this is not going to work. This is not going to do well enough anymore. It would have earlier, but now it doesn't. So I also sometimes just waste time like this, where I spend like 4 or 5 hours preparing something, researching and starting on a video, only to then stop for a moment and be like, no, this is gonna fail, I feel it. So stop, throw everything overboard, discard, redo. I really need an editor technically, I always think, well, then I have to find someone, probably go through several people until I find somebody who does things exactly the way I want, and I have to explain to them how I want it. I have to shove files back and forth. So, which at first takes even more time, so I just end up doing it myself. It's not ideal, but not I'm really getting too tangential. So, yeah, once again, I very much appreciate being able to do this. I'm grateful for the audience I have. I love what I do, but it's pretty rough as well at times. It can be very much stressful. It can be discouraging, and I tend to swing back and forth between jaded and frustrated and defiant and motivated. Just like this, okay, I'm gonna crush it this time. And apparently I did with the sickle video. That was the first one that really took off in a long time. That first one that actually performed the way videos used to. So there's hope, I guess. Anyway, this was too long. I initially intended to make this way shorter, but yeah. Rant over, that's it. I don't know if there's any kind of value in this, but I just had to do it, or wanted to, or whatever. So thanks for listening if you made it this far. Have a good one.